Greetings, this is Management 430, Human Resource Management, and this set of lectures will be about uh, risk management, including safety, well-being, and wellness. And safety just goes beyond making sure we don't stick our hands in a cutting machine or something along that line. It also means we need to make sure we have good ergonomics for our workers and that we're managing their stress. These are all part of wellness impacts. So we have to be thinking beyond just workplace accidents when we think about employee safety. We want to make sure they're safe. We want to make sure they don't get sick. We want to make sure that they have, clean air to breathe and a reasonable environment within which to work. And we can't do that if we are cutting corners and not providing them the support that they need. So we'll talk about the different ways that we can help manage workplace safety and well-being. Workplace stress is one of the first things we'll talk about. And when there is a stressful environment, it causes distraction. And a distracted worker is a very dangerous and unsafe worker. It has tremendous impact on productivity. It has a tremendous impact on their ability to work safely. They increases the likelihood of workplace accidents and errors. And our job is to figure out how to create jobs in such a way that people don't feel that high levels of stress and that we have tools for them to better manage their stress. A stressor is the thing in the environment that impacts the person, and strain is how each person reacts to that stressor. And we'll talk about this thing called the JDR model, which talks about the different sources of stress and how we can try to figure that out and then mitigate those stress events so that they can be more productive and less stressful. So challenge stressors and hindrance stressors are an example of two elements of the workplace that can have an impact on people's levels of stress. Challenge stressors are the actual challenges of the job itself, the difficulties of it, the demands, how urgent things are, those sorts of things. And then hindrance stressors are the context, the environment that they're doing the work in. And so the work could be relatively easy, but if the context is difficult, a toxic work environment or poor politics, not enough resources to do the jobs that I need to do, you're going to end up with definitely a difficult situation. Hindrance stressors tend to be more associated with poor worker outcomes, burnout, and things like that. Challenge stressors, while if they are too high, can create burnout and problems, often though, challenge stressors are really do a lot to improve workplace outcomes. So they can have a positive impact. Why? Because people want to rise to the occasion. They want to do well. They take it as a challenge to improve themselves. And so when we are in a situation where we've got a reasonable expectation, although it's a bit challenging, that can have a positive impact. So there's things such as distress and eustress. Hindrance stressors are distress, that are negative stressors. Challenge stressors can be both. They can either be eustress, which is a good stress, or we can be distress, which is the bad stress. And so in both circumstances, we want to make sure we're minimizing the distress and working with to improve so we have only eustress, or at least maximizing as much eustress as we can get. Work-life balance is obviously a challenge for just about everybody. The old notion that people check their problems at the door and they walk into work and they can just be focused on their job, that mentality is going away because we recognize more and more that the stressors in people's private lives can spill over into workplace stressors. Meaning, if I'm struggling with something at home, it's hard for me to be um, undistracted and to be able to only focus on my job. I'm very likely to be distracted. I'm very likely to be preoccupied with the thing going on at home, which means my attention is split. And I'm not giving my work all of the attention that I need to. And so when people are feeling this balance between work and home to be out of balance, they feel like they're always on, whether they're on at home and having to deal with the things at home, and they're on at work, and there's no place where they can get a break. And the conflict can go both ways. Like work conflict can come to home and impact us at home, and home conflict and challenges can influence us at work. Because bottom line is, our brains become preoccupied, and our capacity to understand things can be severely limited. So what we want is to try to figure out how to minimize those stressors so that people can transition from home to work and work to home without having those distressors. It makes them better family members at home, which means then they also can be better workers on the job. So in order to reduce stress, we first of all have to figure out what is the source of stress. And it can be from a whole host of sources, but we have to be asking the questions about all the aspects of the job, resources, bosses, coworkers, interactions, conflict, customer demands. All those sorts of things can create workplace stressors for us. And our job then is to figure out how to remove those stressors before they become problematic. So get at the root causes and nip them in the bud. Workplace bullying is also a really big source of stress, and we can't allow people to bully because it leaves us in a very dysfunctional level of performance. People get distracted. People cannot bring their best selves to the workplace. It doesn't increase their likelihood of being good workers. It actually decreases their likelihood of being good workers. This is research supported, right? So bullying and challenging people and pushing them really hard only works so far. Eventually people decide it's not worth the effort anymore, and they don't want to be in a place where it's toxic and stressful like that all the time. So our, training programs can be used or should be used to figure out how to support our employees. So we train our supervisors to be better support, and we train our employees how to manage their stress better. So when workers are in a stressful environment, it's important for us to encourage and allow for them to recover from that stress. So if someone has been working really hard, they've been working long hours, and they understand, a deadline was looming, and they respected and understood that they just needed to get the job done, reward them with a few days off. Let them take that time to recover, to get their head on straight, and to get back to work. If someone has gone through a crisis, whether it's at home or it's at work, there was an accident, there was some sort of trauma or tragedy that happened, giving people time to recuperate is really helpful, because when people can bring their best selves to work, they're more productive. But if you push them before they're ready to come back, they may increase the likelihood that they're going to quit. So how do we do that? Well, again, encourage them to take vacation days. Give them breaks, places where they can be quiet. So a meditation room, or a room where they can take a nap, or what have you. When you have highly stressful jobs, providing opportunities for people to check out in a healthy way to bring their stress levels down is really beneficial. And organizations can do this, right? We want to be able to support our employees in all the ways that they need to be supported, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all the ways that we have interaction with others. So creating a context where they feel like they're not being physically overworked or emotionally challenged or too much cognitive things that they need to manage, and that they have meaning in what they do. That they're not doing stuff that's meaningless. And these are the things that make that big difference for workers. We already talked about wellness programs when we were discussing the different types of benefits that an organization can offer their employees. And basically what these initiatives are, as we've said, is things that offer opportunities to get healthier, to be more fit, to improve well-being, stress management, meditation, yoga, exercise routines, whatever it takes, weight loss support groups, anything, and helping our employees to be their best selves gives money back to us in a huge way, right? We invest the money in them, and their productivity and improvement and engagement with the organization is a benefit to the organization in return. So, we want our employees to be their best, the best that they can be. And so we want to make sure that when we are trying to offer wellness programs and opportunities for people to be well, ask them what they want, ask them what they need. And then, of course, also go to the research. And what does the research say are really important things that we should do? But across the board, making sure that people have benefits that help them to be healthier, to be less stressed, to be as comfortable in the workplace as possible so they can do good work is really the key. There are a bunch of different types of elements that go into a wellness program, and you can do some, all, part. Disease management is one. For example, illnesses, people who have high blood pressure or people who have problems with high weight, not necessarily a disease, but certainly diabetes management, those sorts of things really help people to manage their health in a better way. Then there's lifestyle management. I can eat healthier and exercise more and have an opportunity to exercise because this is a long-term benefit. Disease management is short-term, and lifestyle management is a long-term investment. And ultimately what we see when we have good programs for wellness is we see more engagement, we see better morale, we see more performance, and we see people unwilling to leave the company. They're not willing to leave. They like their jobs. They want to stay at their jobs. So focusing on the value of wellness programs it would be a huge benefit to organizations. There's a whole bunch of different elements that go into wellness programs. For example, you can have fitness club memberships, nutrition education, healthy eating, weight loss groups, disease management, emotional well-being, making sure that they get good therapy, and meditation, health incentives to make sure that they are maintaining their heart rate and they're maintaining their BMI and maintaining their their sugar levels and things like that. Helping people to sleep better, because when people can't sleep, that can interfere with the wellness in their life. It increases stress. Financial health programs so that people feel like they can manage their debt and they can manage their bills. Smoking cessation, weight loss, health screenings and assessments. Even an on-site doctor or medical care or a nurse practitioner that can make sure people, need a Band-Aid or they hurt themselves, they can be taken care of. When workers feel nurtured and taken care of, that increases that engagement and morale and performance that we talked about. Employee assistance programs differ slightly from a wellness program because the focus of an employee assistance program is to help people who are struggling with something. For example, if they're struggling with addiction, if they're struggling with a mental health problem, struggling with things in their families, the EAPs help them to do that. It manages distress. It makes sure that workers can stay engaged, and to help them when they might have erratic performance. And these EAPs focus on mental well-being and getting them connected and grounded in a way that's healthy for them. HR's role is to determine what kind of programs are needed. They engage leadership, they talk to people, they do a needs analysis, they survey people, they talk to people, they figure out what's the cost-benefit analysis, where do we see the greatest improvement in productivity and improvement in stress management, what kind of incentives would be beneficial to get people to do these things. They develop the entire program through some research and connecting with the sources for these great wellness activities and figuring out what's going to work best for the people in their organization. So what's most important when you're designing these things is figure out what are the needs of the people, making sure that your program has good flexibility, that it increases the likelihood people are going to participate in the programs, um, and you want to figure out how you can market it to people to get them to buy into the programs. You want it to be convenient, because if it's not convenient, they're not going to do it. And if there's any way that you can leverage technology to improve these things, we can do that. Sometimes we have workers who are struggling, and if they are, and we want to help them, obviously we don't want to go into it with punishment or negativity. We want to go in with to be as supportive as possible. So one recommendation is to use what they call the STAR intervention, which means to support, transform, and achieve results. So the goal is figuring out what people need, intervening, talking to them, supporting them, helping to transform them with the changes that need to be made to improve their lives, actively engage with them to help them to achieve that, and then and then assess the results to see whether or not it works. It works. And I think when we can create interventions that help our employees when they're struggling like that, this is a huge benefit. Having sustained dialogue with supervisors and employees about safety-focused conversations and stress management and things like that, when we are actively engaged in intervention and supporting people, we see improvement in the safety climate and safety behaviors, and safety audit scores actually improve significantly. Important to note that you can't use a one-size-fits-all approach to interventions at any way. You want to focus on what an individual needs based on their circumstances, based on who they are, and based on the context. So interventions are person-specific, context-specific, and occupation-specific. So tailoring your messages, tailoring your communication is really the key. Overall, total worker health is incredibly important, which means that we're integrating all aspects of workplace safety and health programs by making sure people have all the protocols that they need to be able to work safely, all the PPE they need, which is the personal protection equipment, making sure they understand the processes and the protocols for how to use equipment. They've been trained on how to do that. Then we make sure we deal with stress management programs and other sorts of things. And overall, you'll start to see a change in your safety culture in your organization. People will take safety more seriously. They'll call out hazards when they see them. They will intervene to try to make sure that everybody is kept safe. But this requires a step-by-step process, managing stress, talking to people, figuring out what's giving them difficulties, and finding ways to create solutions. This is the goal in the long run.